Welcome to the next lecture in our journey through the world of negotiation. Last time, we looked at essential planning and preparation steps, something negotiators often forget to do properly. For now, let's assume that we've done all our preparation properly. Now we need to consider what happens when we meet the other side. And when I say meet the other side, of course, that also includes virtual meetings, Zoom or Teams, as well as telephone negotiations. Hybrid working models have changed many aspects of working life, including the number of face-to-face negotiations, but some will still prefer in-person meetings. Chapter 4 of your workbook includes some advice about hosting negotiations. There is research that suggests you're much better off on home territory. That's because you can control things more. You can access your precedents. You can pop upstairs to pick the brains of colleagues and so on. However, I do think you can push this element of control too far. I've heard about hosts turning up the heating and denying their visitors refreshments in an attempt to coerce them into agreeing disadvantageous terms. We'll be looking at sneaky tricks and tactics in another lecture, and I think that sort of behaviour falls very much into that category. So, I advocate just being nice and respectful and treating your guests with courtesy. Sometimes there can be an argument for holding the meeting on neutral ground, particularly in settlement negotiations where feelings are running high and the two sides really hate each other. One slightly off-the-beaten-track story was told to me by a business contact who runs a translation agency. Now, he was in a dispute with a client who owed the agency a large amount of money, and they arranged to hold a settlement meeting to try to come to an arrangement. He had a friend who was a partner at a large and prestigious law firm, and the partner offered him free use of a large conference room at their Swiss offices in the city. Now, my friend sensed that the other side were impressed and a bit overawed by the swanky offices, and, more to the point, there was the unspoken but ever-present threat that if they couldn't agree terms, then the agency would simply instruct that prestigious law firm to sue them. In reality, there was no way that they could afford that firm's fees, but the suggestion was there, floating in the air. Surprise, surprise, they managed to agree a deal on terms favourable to my business contact's translating agency. So that's the venue itself. What about room setup? Optimum seems to be sitting around a round table, which is inherently less confrontational than eyeballing each other face to face across a long boardroom table. If you don't have the luxury of a round table, then try to sit at right angles to each other. Again, this is inherently less confrontational than staring at each other face to face. Then it's necessary to table the agenda, which may well have been agreed in advance. There's no point in negotiating 4 issues, only to find that a 5th one has been lurking unaddressed in the shadows. Get the issues on the table. With that in mind, let's return to our actors' contract negotiation, where the agent is holding a preliminary meeting with a member of the theatre's management.
Welcome to the All Times Theatre. I'm so glad you could make it.
Thanks for inviting me over. I'm sorry about all your troubles with Jason Williams.
That's actors for you. Flighty, self-obsessed, will sue and never work again.
Yeah, I used to be an actor.
Well, let's get the issues on the table. What have you got?
Well, we need to discuss fees, length of contract, the number of matinees and evening performances you want John to do, and publicity. Any other issues?
Yes. Following on from your last point, we need to discuss John's availability to give interviews to local radio stations, newspapers, etc.
Yeah, that's fine. So I think we've got all the issues on the table.
Great. Now, tell me what you want. After you.
Okay, let's stop right there. What's the potential issue of concern for our agent? Take a moment to consider the following on-screen question. goes first in a negotiation is a highly contentious issue in the world of commercial negotiations. The textbooks are entirely split on the issue. I once read a review of a negotiation manual published by Harvard Business School, and one of their central recommendations was to do what the theatre representative did in that little scene, invite the other side to go first. The idea behind this is to get the other side to put their cards on the table so you can see their opening position, assess it, and maybe discover the odd pleasant surprise. Now, there's a contrary view, and that's that there's no such thing as a pleasant surprise in business, just nasty ones. So therefore, it's best to get in there first. A few years ago, I managed to sit in on some negotiation training for investment bankers who, of course, negotiate deals all the time. They're often encouraged to go first. Their buzzword is anchoring. The idea is to go first, aim as high as realistically possible in your opening position, and that then anchors the discussion at a high point near to your wish list. It's then up to the other side to bargain you down from there. Of course, circumstances may well dictate who goes first, but if you have the choice and you've done your homework properly, then I'd say give it a go. A few years ago, I ran some workshops for a large company, and we ran a series of role plays. One of the directors came to see me afterwards and said that he's always tended to invite the other side to go first. But just as an experiment, he decided to go first in his role plays, and he told me that in his opinion, he'd got away with blue murder. He'd also been negotiating with colleagues who knew him pretty well, which added to his feeling that going first might yield stronger results. So, back to our agent and theatre management negotiation. Let's give it a go. Maybe something like this. Okay, now we've got the issues on the table. Maybe I can tell you our thoughts and then you can tell me yours. We're looking for the standard 12-month contract, 5 evening shows and 3 matinees a week. John's name to go above the titles on all posters, and John to commit to a minimum number of press and radio interviews that your PR company arranges. In return for this, we'll expect a fee of $5,000 a week.
What?
Now, there we have a classic flinch. But discussion on that belongs to the next lecture, which is all about how effective negotiators communicate in order to tackle sensitive or difficult issues and make progress. And for that, you'll have to join me for the next lecture.